This is CBC Vancouver News.
As everyone who's been through this and the whole country knows, this is a very stressful time.
Hundreds of homes are under evacuation order tonight as more than 300 wildfires burn across BC. Plus,
similar time frame, 2 days in a row, young women have been found deceased on beaches around English Bay.
the body of a second woman has been pulled from the waters of English Bay. The police investigation into the deaths intensifies. And
But I'm so happy that I stuck in it. I'm representing my home country in the Paris Olympics.
a BC gymnast is heading to the Olympics in Paris after a big climb back from injury. Hi, I'm Michelle Ghoussoub. Thanks for joining us. We begin with breaking news tonight. An evacuation order has been issued for the town of Jasper, as well as the national park, due to nearby wildfires. The municipality has also declared a state of emergency. People in Jasper and in the national park are being told to leave the area now, and those evacuees are on their way to British Columbia. They are being told at this hour to head west along Highway 16. That highway is already closed eastbound because of the threat of fire, but will stay open westbound so evacuees can get out. Several campgrounds and other areas have already been evacuated. Officials are telling people to take important documents, medication, pets, and emergency supplies. BC's Minister of Emergency Management, Bowen Ma, has said BC is doing all it can to provide safe refuge and is coordinating evacuation routes and arranging host communities here. And as those evacuees head in our direction, here in BC, more than 350 wildfires are burning after a volatile weekend that saw hundreds of people told to leave their homes. There are 17 evacuation orders and 22 alerts in place right across this province. As Liam Britton reports, the weather this week continues to cause concern.
Over the weekend, dozens more wildfires flared up in BC, and hundreds more people under orders to evacuate, like Julia Mackey, who runs a theatre in the arts-focused community of Wells.
Everyone's been incredibly kind, and we've been receiving messages from across the country. And yeah, of course, as everyone who's been through this and the whole country knows, this is a very stressful time.
The Antler Creek fire threatens Wells and several other Caribou communities, like the historic gold rush town of Barkerville. Staff had to hurry a few dozen visitors away from the Living Museum.
If we lost a place like Barkerville, there would be a huge gap in the tourism industry and the heritage industry. And there's a lot of people who just love this place. I've worked at Barkerville for 18 years, and the thought of losing it is unimaginable.
Antler Creek is one of 4 current fires of note, meaning fires that are highly visible or a possible public safety threat. It's burning out of control, and that's led some people to evacuate to Quesnel.
We have always known that we're a completely strong community where we help each other, and we may not speak to somebody on the street when we go by, but if they need help, we're there and doing that. And you just see all of that here.
In the central interior, some residents of Williams Lake briefly evacuated Sunday when a fire erupted in an industrial area.
I have never seen this kind of aggressive fire.
The city's Emergency Operations Center says the blaze was sparked after a tree fell on power lines. Evacuation alerts, a local state of emergency, and water and access restrictions remain in place there.
Thank God, no, keeping my finger crossed, no human loss or anything, but there been some structural damage.
A spokesperson for the Wildfire Service calls Monday's conditions unsettled.
So today we're looking very windy and unsettled across British Columbia. It's still hot and dry in the south.
The emergency minister says there are supports for evacuees and is urging them to register online. She adds more help is coming as fires spark.
Anticipating to receive wildfire assets and crews from Alaska, Yukon, Ontario, Nova Scotia. We've received some from Australia and New Zealand, and incredibly grateful to all of our partners for pulling together on this.
Environment Canada has heat warnings in place for much of inland BC and watches for severe thunderstorms, which are believed responsible for over 80% of this year's wildfires.
People living in the Bowron area in the Caribou region are being asked to leave immediately as a new evacuation order has come down. Reservations for the Bowron Lake Canoe Circuit are also being cancelled.
Spent the spring urging British Columbians to enjoy our beautiful BC parks, and now I'm urging them to continue to enjoy them, but also to keep an eye on the BC Parks website, on social media, on local communications channels, so that you know what's happening, you know if there's a new wildfire springing up.
The evacuation order covers over 300 square kilometers to the east of Wells and part of Bowron Lake Provincial Park. The evacuation route runs from Bowron Lake Road to Highway 26 to Quesnel. And over in the Kootenays, more than 100 properties south of Silverton Village are on evacuation order due to the Slocan Lakes fire complex. The Comanco Creek wildfire forced the closure of a section of Highway 6. The Nemo Creek wildfire on the west shore of Slocan Lake prompted an evacuation order for more than 20 waterfront properties. The mayor of Silverton says she'd like to see better communication from officials.
We're pretty socked in with smoke. It's pretty hard to breathe out there, but residents are doing okay. Everybody's been out fire smarting, finishing their last fire smarting around their house and packing up what they can.
The Alwyn Creek fire also triggered an evacuation order for more than 129 properties south of Silverton. The entire village and its surroundings are also on evacuation alert. Well, Vancouver police are investigating after 2 bodies of young women were found along 2 separate beaches in the city. One body was found on Sunday morning at Sunset Beach. The second was found along the shoreline near the Kitsilano Yacht Club. And as Mira Baines reports, police are still working to identify the cause of death.
Vancouver police say at this point in their investigations, they haven't determined whether or not the deaths of 2 women whose bodies were found Sunday and Monday were the result of crime. Investigators say drones are air mapping the shore while the Marine unit, along with the Major Crimes Unit, search for evidence.
2 similar cases, similar proximity geographically, similar time frame, 2 days in a row. Young women have been found deceased on beaches around English Bay, and we absolutely understand how that can and will be a cause for concern in the community and likely speculation about how they died, whether or not their deaths were the result of crimes.
Investigators are working with partner agencies, including the Coroner Service, to determine the causes of death. They're also combing through missing persons reports. Addison described the first woman found by a passerby at Sunset Beach.
She appears to be a woman in her 20s or 30s. She appears possibly to be dark-skinned, possibly black, but we don't know for certain yet because we have to await the findings of the coroner.
The body of the second woman was found on the shoreline also by a passerby at around 1:30 p.m. Monday afternoon near the Kitsilano Yacht Club. The bodies were found in the days after the celebration of light fireworks. Addison says several police officers were on duty at the family-friendly event, and it's too early in the investigation to say what might have happened.
If at any point in these investigations we determine that there is a reason for people to be fearful for their safety, or there's a greater public safety concern, we will be the first to tell the community so that they can take proper precautions.
Police say people, particularly in the Kitsilano neighborhood where the second body was found, will see a visible police presence in the coming days as investigators search for answers. Mira Baines, CBC News, Vancouver.
The province announced it's building more than 100 new rental homes in Whistler for middle-income residents. As Michelle Morton reports, it's the first of the BC Builds projects to break ground, and the province says they're just getting started.
The province says ground has been broken for a new rental complex expected to be completed by 2026. It's set to be made of 2 wood frame buildings with 104 homes varying in size, from studios to 3-bedroom units.
The people who actually run the city of Whistler, the people who work in the restaurants, the people who work in the tourism industry, they need housing, and it has been a challenge for a long time.
This housing is part of the provincial program announced earlier this year. It aims to build thousands of rental homes on underused public land for middle-income earners, spending no more than approximately 30% of their income on rent. The province says it's providing nearly $13 million toward the project through a BC Builds grant and making more than $27 million in low-interest financing available.
I am convinced that this investment is a clear statement of the high regard that you hold for the tourism industry and, most importantly, for tourism workers.
When Economist questions if it makes sense for the provincial government to build brand new homes or if instead there should be subsidized wages in Whistler.
By making this housing available only probably to some of the best compensated workers at Whistler, you're reducing the need for subsidy, but you still leave open the question of how the less well-compensated workers near Whistler are going to manage to live anywhere within shouting distance.
Meanwhile, projects with BC Builds are also underway in Gibsons, Duncan, Vancouver, and North Vancouver. Michelle Morton, CBC News, Vancouver.
The Premier is asking the federal government to review its bail laws after the death of a Surrey woman. Her alleged killer was released from jail just days before the fatal attack.
An individual who was involved in violent crime, who was rearrested for having a knife and was released back into the community within days of being arrested again, only to murder somebody. This is exactly what we were fighting to prevent.
David Eby and premiers across the country wrote a letter to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau Monday. The letter came after the Council of Federation in Halifax last week, as other premiers shared similar stories. The new bail laws passed earlier this year aim to make it harder for people who have a history of crime to be released. The letter says other organizations like the National Police Federation are also asking for bail reform. Pro-Palestinian protesters are dismantling their encampment at the University of Victoria. The university issued a trespass notice on Sunday and told campers they had until Monday morning to leave. The camp was set up in May. Protesters made several demands, including that the school divest from investments connected to Israel. The school says that it had taken a calm, measured, and reasoned approach to the protests since it began, but administrators see no further prospect for a successful dialogue. American officials are loosening proposed new rules for allowing dogs into the United States. The U.S. Centers for Disease Control had announced that new rules designed to keep rabies out of the country would take effect August 1st. The original changes would have required dog owners to provide lengthy paperwork, including proof of vaccination signed by a veterinarian. Dogs would also have to be microchipped. Now the CDC says as long as the dog has been in a low or rabies-free country for the previous 6 months, it can cross into the U.S. with a simple import form that can be filled out online on the day of travel. The requirement for a microchip remains in place, and all dogs entering the U.S. must be more than 6 months of age. A fake nurse who treated nearly 1,000 patients at medical facilities in Vancouver and Victoria has now pled guilty to assaulting victims with an intravenous needle. Jason Proctor spoke with Benit Brach a little earlier about how this woman was able to get away with her crimes for so long.
Well, her name is Brigitte Cleroux, and, we've sort of followed this story for a while. It came up a few years ago. Basically, what happened is she ended up working at BC Women's Hospital and also at a private healthcare facility, a post-surgical kind of a facility in Victoria. And as you say, she treated 1,000 patients there, including giving people things like fentanyl and hydromorphone intravenously, which led to an assault with a weapon charge, the weapon in this case being an intravenous needle, because people consented to being jabbed by a real nurse, but they did not consent, obviously, to being given intravenous drugs by somebody with absolutely no medical credentials whatsoever.
Yeah, 1,000 patients. It makes you wonder, how did this happen for so long?
Yeah, so, this woman has a serial history of posing as a nurse and of, fraudulently obtaining benefits and that kind of thing through that kind of thing, and of treating patients. Essentially, what she did in some ways is she gave the name of a real nurse and that woman's registration number, so, there was that. But then also she basically manipulated the application process so that the references, the reference email that the people would deal with to get this sort of supposedly independent view of this woman actually came back to her, and she gave herself 5 out of 5 stars and talked about, hey, you know, how fantastic she is as an employee. You've got to hire this woman. So, you know, they ended up relying on basically references she wrote herself.
And do we know what happens next now with her?
Yeah, she'll be sentenced sometime this fall. I believe there's also a class action lawsuit against her. So she's looking at years in prison. Wow. She's already in prison in Ontario for posing as a nurse at 2 facilities there.
Still to come, we'll introduce you to the province's star athletes competing in the 2024 Paris Games. Stay tuned. BC's Zachary Clay is heading to the Paris Olympics as part of Team Canada's male gymnastics team. It's a significant moment. It's the first time the men's national team has qualified for the Games since 2008, but it's also a milestone for Clay, who had to overcome a serious ACL injury in 2015 that threatened to end his career.
was always a dream when I was a young kid to make it to the Olympics one day. And, you know, as a kid, it was just very hard for me to picture that. But I'm so happy that I stuck in it, and I'm representing my home country in the Paris Olympics. I guess the way I got into gymnastics was my preschool teachers, they had like a play, and they got a kid to do a cartwheel in the play. And apparently I had the best cartwheel they've ever seen.
On top. Good. A little more hips. The feeling right now is sort of amazement, because it's something that you sort of plan for your entire life with your athlete. But to actually have it realized and actually living through it, it's amazing. Okay, make sure you swing before you pull, right? I've been working with Zach since he was 9. He's 29, so it's 20 years now. We both sort of grew up together. Myself as a coach and Zachary as an athlete. Let's go. And then, you know, over the years, we've grown. I've learned how to coach better over the years, of course, and he's, of course, you know, grew as an athlete.
The handstand, the pirouette, the dismount, the whole routine is great. And that means that Zachary Clay, the man from British Columbia, has won the gold. The first medal for Canada on pommel horse since 1995.
You know, we have a little section here at our gym. It's, you know, where the Olympians sort of are showcased. We have plaques from past Olympians, Kate Richardson, my brother, and myself.
So Richard, what's that on your chest?
I got the Olympic rings, you know, for the tattoo.
He's fighting for that dismount right to the end. Truly the national champion.
So I was in the Olympic Games, and my brother was in the Olympic Games. My dad was our coach that went to Olympic Games.
Yeah, much better, Richard. Just to think out more.
For us, it's a family business, essentially. Pretty much all of our families here. My sister works here, my brother works here, my mom. All of our kids essentially train here as well. So I guess it's sort of a family affair, but you know, someone like Zach, who has grown up as well since he was 9 years old, is like a part of the family.
Yeah, me and Rich go way back. Any situation I go through, he can use his own personal experience to help me with anything that comes up. He gives me corrections, like if my toes are flexed in my routine, like you gotta point your toes, right? My coach, he says never give up. You know, over the years, you know, you just gotta tell yourself that, because it's not always easy. Doing sports at such a high level, it takes sometimes a toll on you, and sometimes you get injured, and sometimes, you know, you're sick, and all these things are happening, and you know, you just can't give up, and you need to persevere to capture your dreams, essentially.
Here's a live shot of Harbour Centre Tower. Russ will have your full forecast next.
I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox.
Applications are now open for CBC's Indigenous Pathways to Journalism program. This paid 9-month learning and development opportunity supports Indigenous candidates to really hone their skills as storytellers. Indigenous Pathways provides journalism training, career development support, and work experience. Applicants do not require journalism education or experience to apply. Learn more at cbc.ca/pathways.
The weather update is brought to you by Direct Buy Furnace. To cool and clean the air in your home, call Direct Buy Furnace. Installing Trane, the most reliable heating and cooling brand.
And Russ Lacate joins us now for a look at the conditions. Russ, extreme conditions that you are tracking right across this province.
Yeah, lots of fire activity to talk about. Thank you, Michelle. And some weather that may assist the firefighters over time as well. Most active fires we're keeping track of course, the Antler Creek fire as well as the Shetland Creek fire. Lots of activity going on in the Kootenay district as well. You can see the coastal region has been largely devoid of fire activity thus far, but it's quite significant across the interior. Very hot conditions on Sunday helped to trigger some of that. Temperatures reached the low 40s. Of course, what we're looking at from this afternoon, it wasn't quite that hot. Our maximums earlier today, about 36 degrees in Osoyoos, 35 in Kamloops. We were in and around the 30-degree mark for the Caribou and parts of the central interior as well. That's going to change a little bit over time, and it does bring us some good news, some cooler air coming ashore. In the short term, of course, still some fire activity, or rather some lightning activity, which may create new fire starts. The following couple of days dry out again over the central and southern interior, but they do cool off, and that may be the assist that we need for the firefighters. Think about Sunday's temperatures being in the 40s, earlier today in the mid-30s. Tomorrow's high temperature across parts of the trouble spots, probably around 30 degrees, maybe 25, give or take. Looking at Williams Lake coming down into the low 20s, what a huge difference. Kamloops hovering near 30 degrees, generally drying out across the southern interior, the southeast corner as well. So no assist, no rain coming to the Kootenay Fire District at all, but temperatures are about 8 to 10 degrees lower than what they were. And the cooling trend has begun already on the coastline thanks to that marine air. We felt it around Vancouver today. You'll feel it again tomorrow and for the following few. In fact, it clouds over enough. Might be a couple of light showers in there Wednesday night and Thursday morning. That's what we're keeping an eye on. But overall, that kind of looks like an old-fashioned Vancouver summer. Morning cloud, midday sun, and temperatures in the low 20s, Michelle.
And firefighters will certainly be welcoming those lower temperatures. Thank you so much, Russ.
You bet.
And that is your late news for Monday. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. For news anytime, visit our website. That's cbc.ca/BC. Your next local news is on the early edition on CBC Radio 1, and that starts tomorrow morning at 5:30. Good night.